Willow. It was quite a pleasant surprise watching this film.
Yes, I thoroughly enjoyed it and I had fun with it.
Watching it right off the bat, you know, we're kind of expecting there to not be a crawl of any sorts right off the get-go, and there isn't. It's pretty much in the same vein as Rogue One, except a little bit more, which I think that definitely threw me off. Because, I mean, even in Willow, there was some exposition to let you know what was going on in the world. But, I mean, we know what's going on in the world. We know what is happening in the universe. But they don't really focus on that. They focus more on what's going on in Corellia with, you know, a baddie that's just kind of taking kids and using them to, you know, get all this scavenging done. And she's kind of a crook, but she really doesn't have any impact on the story. So that's why that little bit of exposition for a scene that lasts very shortly in the beginning of the movie didn't matter to me. I just did not like it when it's like explaining all this different stuff to me. You could have jumped in. I would have figured that out as it played out with just what was happening in the movie.
See, with me too, I kind of forgot that about like when there was like text happening. I was like, oh, this is kind of weird because like with the standalone, there never really was any text or crawl. So when they did the stuff that you said, I was just like, okay. And then it like starts and you're in Corellia, and I don't know, it just felt really, really slow at the beginning, and I didn't really care about anything that was going on during that time.
Definitely started out rough for me as well with Lady Proxima, and she came out and she was like the worm out of the water, which I was like, okay, we're doing another worm thing. This is very reminiscent of like Jabba the Hutt type scenario. But then there was also the scene with Kira, and she's like talking to Han and just telling him a bunch of stuff that's clearly for us. It's not for him. I just felt like they were just still spoon-feeding us more exposition after we had already gotten a bunch of text giving us more exposition. I was like, okay, I get it. You're trying to catch everybody up to speed on what's going on here. But to me, it felt like we didn't really need that because we got all of that as it played out in that whole scene where he's trying to get off of planet with Kira. With that, though, it was that entire final chase that they had to get out of Corellia, and they were at the essentially a like processing
bay.
Yeah, a processing bay where they were trying to get off planet, but that didn't even work out for them. They didn't even have a plan to get off planet.
Yeah, they were kind of, but at the same time, I feel like that is kind of like Han Solo-ish too. Like he's just kind of a person like, I'm just gonna do what I need to do to help survive myself.
Right.
I don't know how I'm gonna do that, but I'm gonna do it. And there were a lot of things that happened during that time too, especially when he is trying to figure out a way to leave after Kira no longer can be with him. And then he goes to the Imperial recruit center over there, and he basically was, and this is one of the parts that I was rolling my eyes. I was like, oh, come on. It's like too on the nose, and I wanted it to be something different. And so basically when it was just the guard or the admiral or whatever that basically gave him his last name, and I feel like it would have been something that Han was like, I'm Solo, like I'm a solo person. It's Solo, so it
feels like it should have been like something always with him.
He should have already had it. Yeah.
And it wasn't with the whole recruiter just giving him the name right there. Like it was just kind of a 1, 2, 3 punch of just things that I'm like, I don't really dig what's happening here. And it's funny because when that whole thing happened in the beginning, and there was no opening crawl, audibly you heard people sitting behind us that were like, damn it! So, like, they were mad because, like, so they really aren't going to add a crawl to any of these standalones. Like, you could tell this person was like waiting for it, and the second it didn't happen, he was very let down. However, at the same time, right in front of us, when Han pulls out the fake thermal detonator with the rock, I thought this guy was going to fall on the floor, cracking up.
So I think because of that scene, I got taken out of it because he was laughing so hard. And it is kind of a funny thing because he does the thing with his mouth, and the guy was just cracking up at it. And then especially when Lady Proxima was like, you just used your words to click the thing, I just saw you do it. And then he just lost it. And so I was laughing because he was laughing. And it was sort of a funny part, but like, it was.
And that just shows like different scenes, people took them differently, interpreted it differently,
right.
where the rest of us, we were already kind of turned off by what was happening, to where when that moment happened, it didn't work on us. So that just shows how you already kind of have these, you know, walls starting to be put up.
But it was great to see the difference between it, like see people who are kind of just there to watch it and they're like, what's going on? And then you have somebody who is enjoying himself watching this movie, and that was really good. Fun to see.
And I really enjoy, like, I even turned to Vanessa once he does join up with the Imperials and ends up becoming, you know, part of their thing 3 years later, and he's on the planet battling it out with the Mud Troopers. I loved the action sequence. I even moved over and I told her, like, this is more of a war film than Rogue One, in my opinion, because it was gritty. There were dropships dropping the AT-STs. People were getting blown up all over the place. It was just a crazy war, and it reminded me of, like, what I really liked about Clone Wars, but looks so much better than what we got with Clone Wars, you know, when the dust is up on Geonosis and you've got the battles going on. Like, it just felt really gritty to me, and I loved it. And then as soon as Woody Harrelson and his troop showed up, and Tobias and his gang, like, I was just like, they're not part of it. Like, you could just tell they're not part of it. They're infiltrating something.
Yep. And
then I love when he's like, Captain, and he looks down, you see the bullet hole in the chest plate. You're like, yeah, he totally just stole that armor. So they've been doing it for a while, and I really liked how they kind of came together, and how Tobias was just ready to kind of throw him to the wolves. He didn't care.
And one of the things too, I was curious as to how they were going to do the life debt and like the meeting up with Han and Chewbacca. And the way that they did it, like, it didn't even cross my mind, like, when he said beast, and I was like, oh, are they giving him, like, a Rancor? Like, they have their own Rancor or something like that, and they're gonna throw him in there. But then, like, as soon as he got dropped down, then you saw the hand, of course, you're like, oh, that must be Chewbacca. And I just love how, like, that scene with them too, where he's just like, and he does the thing, he's like, yeah, I know your language, some of your language, and then at that moment, I feel like Chewbacca was like, oh, somebody knows my language, this is interesting, and then they help each other at that moment, because I feel he was like, oh, maybe this is somebody I can...
And 3 things popped up for me. Yeah, 1 was a Rancor, 2 was Chewbacca. Oh, it's going to be Chewie in there. And then as soon as he dropped him in, I'm like, oh, it reminds me of Return of the Jedi, when Han Solo got thrown into the cell and Chewbacca was already in the cell.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, what is that? And then he comes out of nowhere and he's there. So I was like, oh, yeah, it's going to be Chewie.
They're always in places together like that.
They end up in those crappy situations all the time. And the 3rd was Army of Darkness. It's just when Ash gets dropped into the pit.
That's right. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, them coming together and then working together and fighting. I love when they're kicking the crap out of each other when he slams Han Solo through the pillar to knock it down, and then they escape. And he throws Han Solo out, and they get to the ship. I mean, I really love the shower scene. Of course, that was slapsticky, but I love the part after that where they're just on like the bridge or outside on the catwalk of the ship, and they're just talking to each other. And I just love where he's talking to Chewbacca and connecting with him. And it's a real great moment to finally see Han and Chewie at the origin when they're meeting each other. But yeah, life debt never comes up. They never mention it. He saved Chewbacca's life, but never mentioned whatsoever, and we know it exists because it's canon. It's in the book.
But at the same time, too, like, I mean, it comes later in the movie, and I'll talk about it at that time, too, when they're on Kessel, doing the thing there, and there's a certain scene in that part, and we'll get to that when we get there, that I feel like you don't have to say life debt because he already has that with him.
And stuff like that happens in the movie a couple times. Where it's like, you don't need to say it, I suppose. It's just, it goes without saying. So the train heist, I really like the train heist. More so the cinematography, the shots that were used in the train heist. I love Jon Favreau's character. Rio, I think his name was, flying the ship. I thought he was a lot of fun. I'm glad he got more than what I was expecting him to get.
See, for me, the cinematography was great with the train shots and everything, but at the same time, I didn't care about that whole part.
I was stressed because even though I know they're going to pretty much make it out of it, at that point in time, it popped in my head, wait, I don't remember seeing Thandie Newton later. Like, I don't remember seeing Jon Favreau's characters later. So I was like, damn, like, is not everyone going to make it out of this? I thought they'd all make it out and then they'd move on to the next. And nah, that's not how it works out. I love that you have these Skywriters coming in with, I forgot what the guy's name, even something. When they come in and end up trying to take the, what's the thing that they keep? Coaxium. And it's, for me, like, when that started happening and they blast away Jon Favreau's character, Rio, and then they take out, when Thandie Newton is just like, it's been a fun ride, and she blows out, I'm just like, damn! Like, I couldn't believe...
They two characters.
Yeah, you just took out his team, and I love that it was his fault, because she told him, is anybody else coming for this? No, no one else is coming. And because of him, it ended up being a wash. And it reminded me a lot of, like, the first Mission Impossible movie, where you had Jack, which was Emilio Estevez, and a few of Kirsten... forgot her name. And like, there's these actors that you know, and they're there with you in the first mission, and right off the bat, you lose them. You lose them in the first mission. So I was like, damn, that's you just raised the stakes, because you were willing to take out some of these characters that I thought I was going to get more to know of, but I felt like I got enough for it to make more of an impact on Tobias's character.
See, and then after the whole train scene and all that stuff, for me, that's where it really started to pick up for myself when they get in contact with Crimson Dawn, essentially, right. And then Paul Bettany's character,
right?
And then you get Kira back, yeah. And you see what happened to her and what's going on with her, and then they. Now I feel like, okay, now we're getting to where we need to go in this story, and then I was like ready for it to happen.
And it's funny because I really like the demeanor of Paul Bettany's character, especially because there's times where he's like super polite, but then he switches over to like that crazy anger. Like, he's your best friend, but at the same time your worst enemy.
Psychotic.
Say, go leave that out. I may need it later. Where he's talking about the crazy dagger. And it's funny because when you're in his office and he's walking around, there's like a little table. Essentially, it's a Indiana Jones table.
It basically is, because he noticed it first and he looked to me and he said it's the statue, this little statue from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Right, it's the one. He's talking about choo-choo.
Yeah.
And behind it is a crystal skull as well.
That one is like
the more obvious
one. But like, if you look down, you're like, oh yeah, look, and it's the statue, which is like, okay,
it's a nice Easter egg.
It's a nice little Easter egg for Han Solo and Harrison Ford and Indiana Jones.
And it was I really like that scene because you don't know which way it's going to go. Paul Bettany, when they tell him, oh, we can actually get all the product we need from Kessel, and he's like, okay, that actually works out. But I'm going to kill you if you screw up.
So going back to one more thing, but going back to the statue, right. It's very reminiscent of Raiders of the Lost Ark when you see C-3PO in R2-D2, so it kind of gives like oh, I'm going to put connecting you and putting you in the Star Wars movie.
It's cool to see them kind of together in that aspect. It looked like he had a Minoc in a little display case too, and then of course the Mandalorian armor that he had. I was hoping there'd be more with that, but there isn't anything with the Mandalorian. Especially when the Skyrider showed up, I was like, are they Mandalorians? No, they're just the king of the Wicker people from Batman. But they end up going to get the fastest ship in the galaxy. They need to get it from Lando, going to that place where he's playing. Damn, I love Lando so much.
Oh, I love Donald Glover as Lando as well, like a young Lando, and I really like the way that he portrayed Lando in this too, because he's this like suave, cocky guy that is like, I got this, you know? And it was great because that is exactly kind of how Lando is. And then you can see it as he progresses in the movie and everything like that. So
it's pure Lando, and I love all the aliens that are around him. There's like this little bunny alien that was next to Han that I just kept like giddy over. I'm like, look at him, he's so cute.
Really happy like when they were playing Sabacc, and I was like, okay, is this like? I was really happy that this wasn't the one that he won. The Millennium Falcon, like it was, and I was like, okay, watch, we're gonna want, like, I even leaned over to him and I was like, he's not gonna win this one, he's gonna win one that's gonna happen at the end of the movie. And I was right.
And it's cool because like when he's talking to Kira, we get to meet L3. I know you weren't a real big fan of L3. I liked L3, but she did sound way too much like Captain Phasma for me. But I did enjoy L3 and the conversation she had with Kira about how much she looked like how Lando loves her and we're compatible.
There are certain things about her that were kind of hilarious, but there were other things I was like, okay.
And then we get to see a lot of the Millennium Falcon, which we definitely get that explanation why it doesn't look like the Millennium Falcon we come to know. But yeah, getting onto the Millennium Falcon, the boot on the Millennium Falcon, I thought was pretty funny. I wish we could have seen how they got it off with Chewbacca. And I love how right away he condescendingly calls him Han. It's Han. All right, Han. Like he and that just gives us that nice little origin as to why he calls him Han, because he's screwing with him. But yeah, Millennium Falcon.
I also absolutely love when Lando is sitting in the pilot seat and then you see Han going into the co-pilot seat. Yeah. He's kind of like, and then of course L3 is like, get out of my seat.
Yeah, she kicks him right out, and it's when we get to see a little bit more of the Falcon that we never got to see before. The bedroom! There's a bedroom on the Millennium Falcon. Of course, why wouldn't there be? And then the closet on the Millennium Falcon, there's so many capes. I loved all the capes. She's trying them on. And then
oh, that is one thing too that I want to point out right now, is that I actually don't really care, or I didn't care about Han's relationship with Kira. Like, I didn't care about them being together or anything. I was just like, huh.
The whole time.
Like, I didn't want it. I didn't need it. Like, they could have been like partners and like friends, but I don't know. There wasn't really a connection between the two when it came to like the romantic side to it.
See, to me, I saw it as a wide-eyed puppy on Han's part, and she's conniving and knows what she's doing on her part. But at the same time, there's parts of her that kind of feel towards him. But in the end, it's like she said, how long you can keep yourself on the board. And I think that that's what she was doing the whole time, which we do end up seeing all the way to the very end. She let him get away with his life, but at the same time, she's playing on the board, and she's always been, that's the thing, is if she's always been doing it from the get-go. He was her way off of Corellia in the first place, and she even brought it up too. It's finding the weakness, and she was his weakness, and then she ended up getting screwed and didn't get off Corellia. She found a way off eventually, very quickly too. 3 years is all it took for her to get in that high level of power. So I think there's more to it that adds depth, in my opinion, and it could just be making it up, but that ending with her definitely kind of helps foster that idea of what could be happening with her. So I was thinking that during that scene, oh, she's using him the whole time. But seeing Tobias and Chewbacca playing on the holographic chess, I mean, that was so much fun. He's like, you can't knock them off. They're holograms. He's like, and I just love seeing Chewie, because we know where it comes later. Like, Chewie, he rocks that board when he's sitting there by himself and he's just kind of playing while they're in the back, and he's just like looking and watching. I love Chewie's mannerisms. I love his eyes and how he's watching, and there's times where he's just off to the side looking, and that's the Chewie I love. I mean, it was very reminiscent of old school Chewie now that we have a new actor playing him. The whole going to the spice mines of Kessel. Yeah, I mean, not the way I envisioned it in my head, and it was different, but it wasn't bad.
But it's never how you imagine it in your head.
Right, of course. And it was, it seemed like the cloud pathway essentially, and how they've had the markers there to tell you how to get it, and that is the Kessel Run, is going through those paths to get to the spice mines of Kessel, or Kessel where they were trying to mine coaxium. See, I can't remember what it was. Like, I do like the aesthetic of it. I like how it looked, and then when they got to the planet, and then Tobias is rocking Lando Calrissian.
So loved that part, and you're just like, that's where he got it, probably.
Yeah, he's had it on the ship the whole time.
The whole time.
That's the thing, is, and he's a swindler. Any way he can get in and out of a situation.
The Wookiee, right? What do they call it?
Yeah, the binders. So wearing the binders and going in, like, it's very Star Wars at that point. And then getting into the actual mining facility, and when I loved the different aliens in there, because there are ones we never see. The guy has things leaking down from his mask the whole time, and then you have all the different little droids that are using. I loved it.
I was going to say, that was one of the good things that I enjoyed about it, that were other characters that you're like, and it was cool how like they would come and you're just like, oh, I've never seen that kind of character before. That's interesting, and that's an interesting look for an alien and stuff like that. So I really like that, especially when we were going back and going back to when they're on the Crimson Dawn, the ship,
right.
and they have the singer and she has the mouthpiece, and then there's the other creature that has
I loved him. Yeah, the little brain guy in the jar that was singing. I was like, he's got a great voice. I love him.
So having those creatures, and then I love how like they had the subtitles as well. And it, like you said, it's very reminiscent of when all old school aliens had the
Greedo, Jabba. Yeah, you do the little subtitles, which they used sometimes and didn't. Like they didn't for Proxima, but yet they did it for the others. But I'm okay with them.
Yeah, that one.
I'm glad they just used it. And it did feel just like a whole new world we've never been to. I always wanted to see what we were getting on Kessel. Like, what did it look like? And it did remind me very reminiscent of Temple of Doom, where they were using the children to kind of mine everything. And I was waiting for the music to kick in when everybody was breaking out, like the... I was waiting for it. I was like, are they going to hide it in somewhere, some kind of Easter egg? But no, they didn't. And I do love how L3 ended up freeing all the droids. I did think it got a little silly where they're like stomping on the boards and releasing everything. I thought that was kind of silly, but I still liked it because I like the droids, especially because they were cut out in the wall for the droids to kind of walk through. And I was like, look, they're in the shape of the droids. I love it. And you had gonks everywhere. But yeah, and it wasn't just humans that were there getting the mining done. It was the Wookiees as well, which to me, I was like, I wish there was a little bit more to that, more weight to Chewbacca seeing the Wookiees. Like, I thought they would be related or not, but I guess if you're Wookiee, you're Wookiee, and that is your tribe. And I love when Tobias said that, where he's like, oh, family, I can't tell if it's family or tribe. He's like, what's the difference? I like that later because it doesn't matter who it is. It's his tribe, it's his family, they're Wookiees through and through. So when he goes like, you have to help them, all right, here you go, you're gonna need this.
I like also too, you kind of see where Kira has been as well a little bit more when she's negotiating with him, and she does the Kung Fu style. What is
Terakasi, Terakasi.
Yeah,
I don't remember how it's pronounced. But yeah, the old video game, the martial arts of, which is like Iron Fist or something, which is basically like Tekken. Tekken's the same thing. But yeah, the Terakasi, and she just rocks that dude in the room. She's like, I've never seen anything like that. Like, that was funny. I laughed at that part, but I was so happy that they did a little Easter egg of the Terakasi. Which was freaking fantastic. But the jailbreak, everybody's getting out of the freaking Spice Mines of Kessel, which sucks because they ain't got nowhere to go. There's no ship for them to get on. So I felt bad. It's like, is everyone getting on the Millennium Falcon?
I know, right? But like, even with that whole thing when they had to get like on the Millennium Falcon, also it kind of reminded me of A New Hope too, when they're going and getting the princess, and then they're all shooting at him, and he does the and he's shooting, or Han is shooting at them as they're like going into the Millennium Falcon. It reminded me of that part so much as well. And then also too, like, you have like a touching, the heartfelt scene with this one, but I was like, I didn't
between L3 and Lando.
L3 and Lando, and it was like a sad moment, but I was like, okay.
It added more weight to who Lando cared about without having to force it down your throat.
Now that I think about it, though, that whole scene with Lando and like with L3, it kind of reminded me of Weebo and Flubber too, when she like and he's like, no, don't go. Yeah.
Granted, that was way more heart wrenching.
Yeah, that one was way more heart wrenching in Flubber because I love Weebo.
But I love the moves that he did to get to her. How he's running and jumping and flipping.
Shooting.
Again, those cinematography moments that they do with the camera. The action is just amplified because of the way they shot it. They make it seem like it's a one take, but you know it's not. You know, they're making cuts behind certain items. But yeah, that whole battle there when they try to keep him off that gun, and it's like they keep running to get the big gun and they keep taking him down. So I felt like we got to get out of here a little bit more than, you know, like in Empire Strikes Back, they're trying to set up that gun to blast the Millennium Falcon. It added more weight that those guns are dangerous and they could take down the Falcon if they need to. And so when they're trying to keep them from getting to those guns, and then Emilia Clarke comes running out and chucks all the thermal detonators and blows them all to hell, first thing I thought was, man, she just murked a bunch of people because there were people fighting everywhere. But yeah, she just blew everybody up, which gave gave him that escape ability. But that's where it leads to one of my favorite parts.
One of the things, though, too, with that scene, and it brings back to when we were talking about the life debt, was you don't have to say that there is a life debt. You just kind of know, especially at that moment when the other Wookiees are like, come, join us, Chewbacca. And he's like, no, I'm going to stay here.
Yeah, I have to stay.
Like, I have to stay. And so at that moment, I was like, okay, this is him saying, I need to stay because they need my help, and he is the reason why I'm here, so I need to help him instead of going with you. And then they kind of like, okay, and then he stays with them. And that definitely, without saying life debt, he's like, I have a life debt for this guy. I need to be here with him.
That makes sense too. Again, without having to say it, it's unspoken. I don't like the way that the other Wookiees look, though. They looked very... But here's the thing, like, I thought about it at that time. I'm like, they don't look like Wookiees. They look like crappy Bigfoot.
No, that too. But okay, it reminded me of the creature. I forgot what the Twilight Zone episode was called, but it was like the one where the guy's on the airplane and he sees the creature outside. Outside.
Terror at 100,000 feet or whatever it is.
It reminded me of that.
Right. Okay, I could see that, but at the same time, I thought I dismissed it because I'm like, oh well, I mean they're malnourished and they're destroyed, and even Chewbacca didn't look like Chewbacca in that mud pit.
Right.
So yes, I was like, okay, whatever, I'll let that go.
They've been tortured forever.
Yeah, but he let him go. I don't know how they got off the damn planet, but at the same time, okay, the Imperials are going to show up and fix everything and capture them all. But when they ended up taking off, and that's where, to me, I got giddy and I was so excited because there is a point when the cruiser, the Imperial Star Destroyer shows up in the big cloud tunnel, and there is a song that hits, and it immediately hits the dun 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 from A New Hope. But it not only takes the music from A New Hope, there's music from Empire Strikes Back, and then of course you combine it together, and all of a sudden you've got this track that is John Powell, who did the music, finally just lets his John Williams freak flag fly. And it is like just an amalgamation of everything that I love about Star Wars. Whereas Michael Giacchino has made it, like his version was very mystic and it was just very emotional. John Powell turned it into a swashbuckling style of music where he adds like these drums into certain songs that John Williams did that just changes it, but it makes it more fun and high intensity. And the song is called A Reminiscence Therapy, and you can find it on the soundtrack, and it's like from the get-go he combines that with the new John Williams score for Solo, and that's the entire Kessel Run when they're trying to get away until they finally fly through the clouds and try to figure out how to get out. But for me, I was just losing my mind when he's outrunning the TIE fighters and he bitch slaps them with the flick of his wrist. And you finally get that moment where Chewbacca and Han Solo come together in the freaking cockpit.
Good. Especially the moment too, because Kira is there, and then she's sitting, and he's like, because I need a pilot. And I was like, no, but Chewie's your pilot. Why is he in the back?
And he sits back like, okay, fine.
And I love the part where she's like, yeah. And then he's like, I got this. And
click,
it's like,
click,
boop, boop,
click,
boop,
click.
Boop, and you're like, yeah.
190.
You look good.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, when he sits down, that was an awesome moment that I really love, where they just work in synergy together, and then you've got the stuff going on in the back of the Falcon too. They ain't just sitting back there.
Like I said though too, like I didn't feel the relationship between Kira and Han. I loved and felt the relationship between Han and Chewie, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to see that they had that relationship with each other.
Right.
So that was an exciting moment there.
And it's funny because when you saw Tobias and Lando and Kira, and I'm going to go help them in the back, it reminded me of like Empire Strikes Back when R2-D2 is trying to get the Millennium Falcon hyperdrive up, and C-3PO is kind of wandering around with his missing leg, and it's just they're in the back doing stuff, or even BB-8 in Force Awakens where he's flying around everywhere. And stuff they even cut out of Return of the Jedi happened with people in the back of the Falcon while they're doing the final battle of Endor with the Death Star 2. So seeing them all kind of work together on this ship, and then they need to figure out how to escape the Maw, the giant huge black hole, and then of course
Gravity
the
well.
big, giant, huge octopus monster thing, the Kraken essentially
Basically.
in space, which I love.
Space Kraken.
We have space whales, why not space Krakens? And the funniest part for me in that situation, which was very Star Wars to me, was when they're gonna initiate the hyperdrive, and they're like, all right, and the clock is ticking and we're about to do it, and here we go, and it's all new, and I was like, the Millennium Falcon doesn't go, that's what it does, it thinks it's gonna get you out of there, and then it screws up. I didn't know, it ain't my fault, it isn't my fault. But yeah, with the Millennium Falcon flying back in, I was like, holy damn, how are they gonna get out of this one? I know they do.
I thought that it was just gonna like somehow swallow them, but they were gonna be okay at the end. But then of course it jumps them and then they get away. At first, like talking about it now, at first when we first watched it, I was like, oh yeah, this is awesome. So this is how he gets to the 12 parsecs instead of the 20 parsecs. That he uses the coaxium to get themselves out because it gives them a hell of a boost to get out of there. And I was like, okay, that's cool. But now thinking about it right now, I'm like, that part is cool, but like all the other stuff, I'm just kind of like, because like as soon as they get to the other planet, he's like, oh yeah, we did that in 12 parsecs, and it's like, okay, that's
and that's partly where I wish they emphasized it a little bit more on, like, well, what do you mean 12 parsecs? Like the whole thing that there was a whole thing back in the day about the ability to do it in less than 12 parsecs, or at least not hit the 20, was that there was a black hole involved, or at least time travel was involved, because the closer you got to the black hole would alter the space-time continuum around you, therefore you were capable of doing it in a shorter
you can kind of make that argument with the gravity well, because the gravity well technically is kind of like a black hole, and they probably had some time there as well. So once they got out, it did, maybe the speedometer or whatever showed 12 parsecs on there.
And the only reason why I think that they did it in less in this movie was that there is a specific path you're supposed to follow, and it can't be done in less than 20 parsecs because it's a measurement of distance. That the fact that they cut to go through, which people don't do, you don't come out of there. He cut to get out, and that's why he did it in less than 20 parsecs, or at least 12. He rounded down. So, I mean, that's the thing, is there's a lot of interpretation still left, and they'll probably say it in a book or the novelization to figure out exactly how it was achieved. But getting to that beach island, and then you have the Sky Riders come in with all the people, which reminded me a little bit of like Waterworld and Mad Max, and kind of westerny with, you know, the hip shot with his holster. And then of course the part that was really funny for everyone in the theater as well was when he does the whole Maxwell Smart moment, where he's like, I've got 30 hired guns in that ship. I just have to give them the signal and they'll come out guns a-blazing. Which Maxwell Smart and Get Smart did that all the time. Never worked anytime he tried to do it.
And then it just jumps, so like Lando's gone, and you're just like, yeah.
Missed it by that much. And then they drop some a little bit more emotional weight on you that, you know what, these guys, the Sky Riders, are actually just trying to build a rebellion. They're horrible people out there.
And then you get more like Easter eggs as well.
Oh, Aura Singh. Yeah, you find out, I don't think you found it out there. I thought you found it out much earlier about how he killed Aura Singh, Aura Singh was... essentially, if you watch Clone Wars, go back to the old school Star Wars stuff. As soon as
I thought it was there.
I don't remember.
My mind is all mungled.
Yeah, I don't remember. I did mungled. I guess that works too. But anyways, the whole thing with Aura Singh, I thought was a cool addition with Woody Harrelson's character, because I mean it's tying us into the prequel, which I really wish there was more of. Make the prequels, you know, fit in this world.
Which makes the ending that much more better too.
And that's the whole thing, where who's going to partner up with who. You see this dilemma within Han Solo on, is he going to help or is he not, and he makes a decision he's going to help right off the bat.
But I think also too that like, and this is what I like, this is Han too, especially when you saw it in New Hope, where he's like, yeah, I'll help you, but this isn't my thing, like I'm not going to be involved in this. Like even in the New Hope, he helps them capture the princess, and then after that he's like,
I want my reward.
Yeah, I'm not helping.
Well, he needs his reward at that point. At this point, he doesn't really owe anybody money. He just wants to have a better life for himself. And I like the parallels with him and Tobias, where he talks about, hey, I got a lot of debt. I'm going to go to this guy in Tatooine. He's hiring a bunch of guns.
See, that was another on the nose, too, that I was like,
I could see that. I could see that.
You should have just been like, "Oh, I have a job on Tatooine, and that's it." Like, or not even say Tatooine. Just be like, "There's this another syndicate that I need to go to."
Yeah, you know? I mean, he says just gangster.
I guess.
But I guess gangster is used in Star Wars to refer to Jabba the Hutt.
Jabba the Hutt is a gangster.
Right, and he's a vile gangster. But yeah, the whole switcheroo, it's this point where it's like, there were things that I saw coming and I predicted would happen, and they do happen, but then there is something that happens that kind of alters that. So it's like, I predicted it would happen, it happened, but then I was caught off guard.
Right, like you predicted that
Tobias was
gonna portray them, screw him over, because he kept like don't trust anyone.
Yeah, don't trust the Walter Donovan approach,
basically. And then when he's in there with the coaxium too, and I was like, no, that's got to be the real thing. Like he's doing like a switcheroo where they think it's fake, but it's actually the real stuff.
And I thought he was gonna take some and like throw it. And it was going to blow up. The Ethan Hunt again, Mission Impossible, the red light, green light. And I thought he was going to take it and explode, and that's how they were going to get out of it. But yeah, it ended up getting the screw over from Tobias. But what I loved about that, and what caught me off guard, and I didn't see that coming, was when Han is basically telling him, no, this is the real stuff right here. And I mean, it's yours for the taking. They don't have it. And he's just like, well, boom, boom. I am also an entrepreneur. I'm going to take this now. Later. And I was like, hell yeah. So he's in it for the money.
He doesn't have, that's his leverage now. Like he doesn't owe anything to him now, and he could just take it for himself.
Well, because he knows that they're going to end up killing him.
Right.
Because they're there to stop him. And so he's like, whatever, I'm going to take this stuff and go, and you guys can't stop me. And he takes Chewbacca and dips out. And then we get the I'm going to screw you over, but I'm not. Like the part where I predict that she's going to pretend like she's going to screw Han over, but she isn't. She ends up fighting Paul Bettany. But then it screws me over again, because I'm like, oh wait, no, she's not going to go with him. And yeah, we end up having that little fight with Paul Bettany. He goes out pretty quick. I do love that it was like the dagger in the sword, but the dagger back into his chest.
It's like he goes out pretty quick, which is very Marvel villain style for sure.
But I did like him, and I thought it was a cool fight. And but yeah, Han Solo, he was just jumping around like crazy.
Getting killed in all kinds of Disney movies. First as
spoilers. So yeah, we do end up having that thing where it's like,
this is a spoiler review.
Yeah, of this movie. But we do have Kira end up having this whole plan all together where she is going to get away, and that's the thing, was where I was like, okay, it's following more in what I thought about Kira, that she was going to end up about it in herself. But at that point in time when she kills him, like I was like, okay, well, maybe she does love him. But then when she's like, go, I'll be there, I'm like, oh, she ain't gonna do that. She's gonna go in it for herself.
And at that moment too, at that point, I was like, okay, so this is kind of who she is. This is how she survives, by, like you said, staying in the game as long as you can.
Right.
And so that part I was like okay with, that she was kind of like, I'm glad that she didn't go with him, to be honest. Like, because obviously I didn't care about the relationship she had with Han. So when she didn't go with him, I was like, okay, good. You did not go with Han. You are your own thing, and that's fine. And then of course, so as soon as like the figure was on screen, and you can't tell who it is, but you could hear the voice, and I was like, that voice sounds so familiar.
We know that voice.
Yeah, it's like, that sounds like Darth Maul from Rebels. And I was like, that's probably Darth Maul. And I was just sitting there, and then as soon as I was like, I knew it! I knew it was Darth Maul. And then I was like, oh, it must be Sam Witwer that did the voice, because Sam Witwer did the voice for Darth Maul in Rebels. And it was so great, because when the credits were rolling and you saw Darth Maul's voice, I was like, Sam Witwer, yes!
And see,
I knew
at that point, like, the whole time throughout the movie, they're hinting that, well, you know who I work for. I work for somebody else. This isn't for me. And so that was like, I immediately thought Emperor.
Right.
And it wasn't until she flipped the switch and the hologram came on and the person started speaking. Yeah. I'm like, that ain't the Emperor.
Granted, Sam Witwer can do an amazing Emperor too.
Of course, but it didn't sound like the Emperor.
It sounded like Maul.
I'm just trying to think, who is that? Who is it? It didn't hit me that it was Maul. Like I didn't think that they would ever put Maul in a live action movie ever again. I thought we came to that road and it's over on Rebels. So when he flipped it over, and I'm like, holy crap, that's Ray Park Mall. Like that, they got Ray Park back. Look at him. Oh, he looks beautiful. And then he stands up, and then you see the robotic legs, and it's kind of, you know, it fits so much in the extended universe and that canon in the Clone Wars and what we've wanted in Rebels. It's like, finally, it's a part of the live action world.
To be fair, I think I was more excited to the fact that I could recognize his voice and knew that it was Maul, and I knew that Sam Witwer was doing the voice, more so than like that whole scene that she was talking to him.
Well, I mean, and the Crimson Dawn, and meet me on Dathomir, and I was just like, yeah, Dathomir Night Sisters, yo! Like,
yeah.
I'm just, the fact that they're bringing into that makes me so happy that they're not turning a blind eye to it, because it's great stories. I hope it does lead into some sort of Obi-Wan thing, even though we know that there's that whole story that happened in Rebels. They might disregard that and go on their own.
See, yeah, and I'm so glad that was what was happening instead of the Emperor, because you know it would be too easy, and it would have been an obvious choice. You're like, oh, they're working for the Empire, all this stuff.
Course.
So as soon as you saw Maul, you're just like, okay, this is awesome. You're bringing other characters that are still here, and
you heard a little bit of the Duel of Fates music.
A little bit.
This is awesome. And you hear it a little bit in there, and it's like, John Powell, you son of a bitch, you did it again. You brought in prequel and Empire and New Hope. Oh, it was just a perfect blend on every level. And yeah, that made me so happy, to the point where it's like, I want to see more in this series, because I really got to find out what happens with all that storyline there. So that was something that just I did not expect. I was completely blown away that they actually did it, versus things that I had predicted and came true. The reward of not knowing and seeing it coming definitely balanced those predictions out. But we do end up getting the final resolution between Han Solo and Tobias with Chewbacca, and I love that scene. When he's telling him about the rules that he taught him, and I told you right away, don't trust me. And then, of course, before he could even finish talking, boom! Shoots first.
Yep.
Shoots first.
And you don't even have to say that he, like, this is one of those, I taught you well kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, he just...
That was my third rule, shoot first. No, he says, I would have killed you. Good move. I would have killed you. And it's like, damn, like... I love that scene, and then he dies.
Yeah, I bet you would.
Yeah, and it's just shoot first, and maybe ask questions later. Just throw a coin to clean up.
Maybe.
But yeah, and then you had Han Solo giving over the stuff to Warwick Davis, which was so awesome.
Oh, that's so, that was
Speak and
awesome.
roll. Speak and roll.
Yay, finally.
Yeah, as part of that group. And
with his actual, like... face.
A face actor, finally. And then you've got that little clan going off to do that. I love that you got Rhodians in there as well, because we haven't been really getting Rhodians at a legitimate level other than like Rebels, where they speak English in that one, Galactic Basic.
Yeah, it's weird.
But yeah, we finally have these aliens, and they're part of the rebellion, but I feel like the overall rebellion of, the Empire, oppressive Empire, which... I don't feel like the Empire is a big baddie in this one. It's the syndicates. It's the crime syndicates that are just running everything. And they all work with the freaking Empire because they turn a blind eye to it. And that's what happened on Corellia, too, in the beginning, when the guy's there with those dogs, which I love those dogs. But when he meets up with the soldiers, he's like... He tells them something, and they're like, okay, and they work with him. In A New Hope, the same thing, when you have the spy going around, and he's working with the Empire, these spies working together, because they're just corrupt, every single one of them. So I'm happy to see more of what is going on within that underbelly of the galactic universe, versus always just being in, the oppression of the Empire. And that's what I thought this movie did really well with. And then, of course, we got what you finally wanted to see. The Millennium Falcon, which was destroyed completely almost, gets put up in a game of sabacc.
Yes, and you finally see Han win and beat Lando at his own game.
But I loved it because there was that moment where he goes up like he's gonna hit him and he hugs him. And that was such pure Cloud City, Bespin, Empire Strikes Back, where he thinks he's gonna hit him and Han's all, oh, and then he hugs him instead. And that was like what Han was gonna do. I was gonna hit him and then he ended up hugging him so he could take the Sabat card because he saw it. So I thought that was great. And I love his freaking Hawaiian shirt, essentially, with the cape.
Basically.
And he's all hitting on the girls. And yeah, the Millennium Falcon now belongs to Han and Chewie. So a lot of fun with this movie. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that feel differently about this. And it's not a movie that we needed. It's not a movie that we wanted. But it ended up being a movie that we had a lot of fun watching. So, with that being said, score, after we've gotten to talk about it and think about it, I think I'm going to hold at my 4, even though I have been listening to the soundtrack a lot, and I really enjoy the soundtrack, but I think that's what's keeping it at a solid 4.
For me...
4.25. I'm moving it up a smidge. 4.25.
For me, I gave it a 3 when we initially watched it, but like after talking about it and kind of marinating it in my mind, I do kind of give it a little bump up to 3.8 because it was a lot of fun, and that's kind of like what you want to do. There was some really silly things in there that I'm like, oh, don't care. But there were a lot of fun things, and I enjoyed the characters and the actors that were playing these characters that you've loved, and they did pretty good. So yeah, 3.8 for me. And it's so funny because I do enjoyed this movie a little bit more than I enjoyed Rogue One. But looking back, I gave Rogue One a 4.5 out of 5 for a review. And it's just kind of funny because looking back now and have watched the movie, it might be because of that time when we went to D23 and they kept playing the movie over and over again, but I would drop that down to about 3.4, 3.5.
Okay. So, I mean, it could change down the road, too. It's just how we're feeling at this moment, having watched it, having discussed it. But yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it. I liked it more than I liked Last Jedi. That's for damn sure. So, either way, thank you guys for watching our full spoiler review of Solo. What did you guys think? Let us know in the comments below. You can also like and subscribe.
And do the thing on our Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, Stardust.
All the social networking gin joints, you know where they are. Kick in the party, fuel the party, keep the party going at a Patreon. Gets us where we need to go. Thank you guys so much. And as always, now it's time to say goodbye. And the Force will be with you. Always? Sometimes, maybe, depending on the movie.